So I wouldn't put it past this company to maybe coordinate, maybe even tip off CBP and the likes of those agencies, just because we've been out here, right? We've been on strike since June 9th and we're not leaving. Do I have evidence of that? No, but it's certainly something that we're in the process of investigating and potentially filing charges over.
You could help build the only independent news outlet, always on the ground with the people, for as low as 16 cents a day.
Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
Flint, Michigan.
Brooklyn, New York.
Government sending one more you to the residents of Chicago.
We need as many independent voices as possible, and that's why what you guys do is so important.
Covering what the corporate media covers up.
JT Siskowski for Status Coup. Before I joined Status Coup, I was a labor reporter, so I'm very familiar with that world and was anticipating bringing a lot of that skill set here to this job, but I haven't had the chance because we have been so enmeshed in covering the Trump administration's immigration crackdown across this country and the disappearances that they are doing of people off of the street in cities across this country, including in Chicago, where Border Patrol and other immigration agents have been on a reign of terror for the last several months. That recently came to a head on a picket line, of all places, where Teamsters Local 705 was on strike against Mauser Packaging Solutions. Gregory Bavino, who is a Border Patrol commander who has been leading the Trump administration's goons in a lot of these operations, recently came to that picket line to laugh at the workers on display. This is video from the union. So there you see in that video, Gregory Bavino laughing directly at the workers who are on this picket line. I want to bring in now Nico Coronado, who is with Teamsters Local 705. Nico, if I could have you start just by explaining your role with the union.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, JT. My name's Nico Coronado. I'm chief negotiator for this group who's been on strike with Mauser Packaging Solutions. And this strike has been ongoing since June 9th. So these are all Teamsters Local 705 members who have been on strike for months now.
Okay, so walk me through this day from maybe just from your perspective. And if you can work in the perspective of some of the workers too, that'd be great. But when did you first hear that Gregory Bavino had shown up to harass your members on the picket line?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So as you can see from the videos, this picket line's been set up very clearly. Scabby the Rat's out there, an iconic strike symbol, as well as our Teamsters Local 705 tent. So there was no way to confuse that this was, anything but a strike line. But as chief negotiator and one of the attorneys for the local, I'm responsible for many units. So I was actually on my way to go bargain with a different group. And I actually learned that morning prior to bargaining that this, Gregory Bovino and his CBP armed agents paid our members a visit on the picket line. And of course, I had to really just focus all my attention there to heading to the picket line. And thankfully, they weren't there that long. They were there for probably a period of 5 to 10 minutes. Approximately 8 a.m. in the morning is when I got the call. And it was actually going when I got that call, as well as the video that was being sent out to me that morning. So yeah, I mean, in terms of emotions, I think I really ran through a lot in that moment, but really I just wanted to make sure the members were okay. And thankfully they were, because as you saw in the video, I mean, these agents were armed, right? Actually, Bovino, and I spoke to a member right after the incident. Unfortunately, there's no audio, but Bovino was laughing at that individual member who was taking the footage and asking him if he was a citizen, right? And it's just behavior that's unprecedented right now. We haven't seen anything like it. Really just coming to a strike line to chill these members while they're engaged in protected concerted activity is something that is really unheard of. at least from my experience here at 705 and in the Chicagoland area. But yeah, I mean, it was very jarring, and no one was detained, thankfully. And you could actually see in one of the videos that we posted, one of our members was showing documentation to one of the agents. But really, we know nowadays, especially since the start of this year, it doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not, right? CBP, ICE, those agents will, detain you for being citizens, even, right? It's just about the color of your skin now, what you're perceived as being, right, ethnically and national origin wise. So really,
Did you feel like sorry to cut you off, but did you
no,
feel
absolutely.
like your members were being targeted? You referenced the picket line being clearly established with some of those symbols like Scabby the Rat, etc. Did you feel like your members are being targeted based on the color of their skin or the fact that they were, in undertaking some sort of labor action? What do you think drew Border Patrol's attention?
Well, when I got there to the strike line, I was told by one of the members that, and you'll see how busy Archer is, right? That's one of the main streets here in Chicago. And there's multiple lanes going each way. They were actually going the opposite way, right? They weren't on the side of our strike line. So our members saw them across the street, really, right? Right now, it seems like through education, ICE and CBP vehicles are very identifiable, right? They're tinted. Usually, their plates or some kind of insignia will give them off, right? And people, of course, will be masked if you could see through the windows. So they did see them across the street, and at first they're like, well, maybe they'll pass by. But then that's when you saw them do a U-turn at another main street over there. It's actually the cross streets are Archer and Cicero. And that's when they pulled up. So, our members, when it came to this incident, I think I definitely spotted out and seen as people potentially that could be picked up by these agents. But honestly, this company that we've been on strike against, Mauser Packaging Solutions, we have over 7 unfair labor practice out there against them, alleging some of the most egregious violations of labor law, unlawful threats, as well as surveillance of our members. So I wouldn't put it past this company to maybe coordinate, maybe even tip off CBP and the likes of those agencies, just because we've been out here, right? We've been on strike since June 9th and we're not leaving. Do I have evidence of that? No, but it's certainly something that we're in the process of investigating and potentially filing charges over.
Okay. So then did it have a chilling effect on your members? You called it, attempting to chill your members in that strike activity. I know from when we were on the ground reporting in Chicago, I was there for about 2 months, covering some of CBP's actions. And there were people who were fully legal citizens who were choosing to stay home because they were just afraid of being profiled or being singled out by Border Patrol agents who happened to be rolling down their street or in some way being caught up in this mess or in the violence that the administration was inflicting there. So you don't have to be illegal for it to have, or to be in the country illegally to it have a chilling effect. Did your members at all, did any of them, not show up to the picket line the following day or go home or anything like that because of that intimidation?
And I think this is a testament to how strong and united this unit is. No, that hasn't happened. And it certainly helps that we live in the city of Chicago, where there's a lot of support from the community. You heard the people just in the video alone honking their horns, right? Doing what they're supposed to do. But I think it's also the training, right? We knew that this was a possibility at the beginning of the strike, just because of the administration's responses to immigrant communities. So we had multiple Know Your Rights trainings, right? So that our members would know how to meet this sort of conduct, right? To kind of meet this moment in a calm and collected manner, and to make sure that they were taking video, because, video won't always act as a deterrent. to Bovino and these types of people, but it certainly helps when you're recording them, right? That somebody's watching and that somebody, you know, could potentially use this in some kind of action against CBP. I think that helped. It certainly did. And I'm just couldn't be more proud of representing this unit because they are some tough members of 705. Some of the toughest I think I know.
In addition, those tough members, in addition to, pushing back against Border Patrol while they're out there, I mean, let's not lose in this the whole reason that they're out there in the first place. They are not just pushing back. They're not there to deal with immigration agents. That is, that was an unfortunate, thing that happened while they're out there attempting to picket this company. So why don't you give me a little bit of the background? Why are they out there picketing? And, what are they fighting for right now in negotiations with Mauser?
Absolutely. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So initially, when we went on strike back June 9th, we're bargaining for a successor contract. And we certainly weren't demanding the world, right? These guys wanted dignity and respect in the workplace, affordable health care, livable wages here in a city that's rapidly starting to increase in terms of cost of living, but also immigration protection language in the contract. And what I mean by that is just we were simply asking for the employer to be a partner with the union as well as the workers, and to deny entry of CBP, ICE, and any kind of federal agents onto their property if they didn't have a judicial warrant, which is really the bare minimum, right? What we've seen time and time again is that ICE and CBP brandishing this administrative warrant, right? That doesn't allow them to do a lot of things. So we just wanted this added administrative hurdle within the contract. And unfortunately, the company didn't want anything to do with that. They constantly rejected any kind of cost of living, healthcare proposals, but also the immigration protection language. That really doesn't cost them anything, right? And that was something I had said, I couldn't even remember how many times at the table. But they just simply weren't interested in it. And we're fighting for that throughout the summer as well as the early fall. But then unfortunately, instead of trying to meet those, I think, modest demands of our members, the company announced on September 22nd that they were going to close the facility, which is located in the Little Village neighborhood in Chicago. And that closure was going to be effective November 21st. So we continued bargaining. We always said we're open to bargaining a successor, but then of course, our attention shifted on to bargaining a severance agreement, which is why we're still on strike. We don't have a severance agreement in place. We're trying to get, some peace of mind for these members prior to Christmas, but unfortunately, as of today, I have not received a response from the company. And that's unfortunate because this company really was preaching at the table that they cared about the well-being and safety of their members, but it's really their conduct and actions are not showing it even until the bitter end. So
one thing that I was struck by when I was on the ground there in Chicago for those couple of months was the way that communities had rallied together in the face of the immigration enforcement. If there was a silver lining to be found, it was just in the way that neighbors were coming together to support their neighbors. I also heard from quite a few people who would support taking economic action to resist the administration's immigration policy out there, calling for things like a general strike, which is not what you guys are engaged in, but is you guys are out on a picket line withholding labor right now. I'm curious, combining those two ideas, how could the Chicago community or the country more broadly, in the face of the intimidation that you're facing, come to support 705 and the the fight that they are doing against Mauser right now?
no, certainly. I mean, and that's a big question, right? I think as a labor lawyer, I think about it a lot of times, right? Of course, there's laws that prohibit a lot of activity when it comes to secondary action, right? Even thinking about a general strike. But that being said, I think that's a conversation that should be ongoing, right? Even if it comes to the idea of repealing a lot of those restrictions that were placed on unions over the last 50 or 60 years, right? Maybe it's a time for a change. But certainly, when it comes to just supporting our members, they're just happy to see people come with coffee, food, um, any kind of just hand warmers helps. I mean, the immense amount of support that was shown, there was already support, right, throughout these long months since June 9th. But the immense amount of support after this happened, because we're such a strong union city, it just really touched all those guys out there. So any kind of just visits from anybody would be greatly appreciated. But in terms of the struggle long term, I think there's going to be a lot of things that and ideas that need to be bounced around, and definitely, potentially, hopefully, the repeal of a lot of anti-union labor laws, that have been, just like I said before, passed over the last 50 or 60 years. I think that would help with the worker movement and labor movement immensely.
This administration has positioned itself, at least on the campaign trail, had tried to position itself as being an administration that would stand for the working man. Do you feel like they've governed in that way when you've got agents showing up to your picket line in this chilling way?
No, I mean, at least I certainly haven't seen it in Chicago. Trying to work here, especially during a National Labor Relations Board that didn't even have a quorum for the longest time, right? You had Gwen Wilcox that was fired because of this administration, right? And that ties the hands of the board itself, and I think a lot of that's by design, right? And now we have a board at full quorum with two very anti-union appointees, right? So I guess, I haven't seen it in terms of this administration. Maybe I could be proven wrong if it is secretly pro-worker and pro-union, but it has not felt that way on the ground. And I think these next few years are going to be pretty tough, and we're going to really see how anti-labor this board is moving forward, as well as the administration.
What role do the Teamsters have to play then in trying to affect change, trying to pressure the administration to be more pro-labor, to try and win actual concessions for working people, or real gains for working people?
So I will say I'm just, I'm a lowly attorney here at 705. I like to think that I do make a difference when I do negotiate contracts, strong contracts for our folks here in the Chicago and Chicagoland area. But my hope would be, at least with us here in Chicago, is that we continue to support our members the best way we can, and continue to hold the line, especially during some tough times that we have ahead of us, for sure.